Guys, uh, thank you for joining us today. For this panel today, we will be discussing the media program and how the developers can make their reach much better. So we have today joined by Rana Rahman from Raptor PR, Rishi Alwani from 0451,
Yeah.
and Kelly Chiew from Level Infinite. So why don't you guys just give a brief introduction of yours? Rana, you can go first.
Yeah, sure. Hi there. Great to be here. Thanks, Tousif. Rana, founder and managing director of Rat PR. I have 2 decades plus of tech PR expertise. Started out doing PR for brands like EA, PS3, Microsoft, Apple, and Rovio. At Raptor, we work with a lot of mobile gaming brands like Sansoft, we work with Xsola, we kind of work with Aghanim, Zebedee, Mijuan. So yeah, a whole range of stuff. In terms of what we do, we create integrated or multi-channel campaigns designed to reach your audience, whoever they are, but also to meaningfully engage with them again, wherever they are. Thanks, Joseph.
Yeah, Rishi, would you like to go
Sure,
next? Yeah.
sure. So I'm Rishi Alwani. I run 0451 Games. I've been in the games business ever since I started working, first in distribution and retail, working with EA, and then moving on to places like Square Enix and Disney. I've also been on the media side of it, running IGN India as well as NDTV's gaming divisions. Most recently, I was at Super Gaming, where I spearheaded their comms efforts to get their upcoming Battle Royale Indus 10 million pre-registrations. Right now, 0451 is engaged with .9 Games, who are makers of 4G Domination, as well as Masala Games that's making Detective Dotson for PC console.
Yeah. Kelly, would you?
Hi guys, I'm Kelly. I'm from Level Infinite, formerly known or rather still known as Tencent Games in China. The main titles that I'm handling is Path of Exile, Honor of Kings that just launched this year. Very exciting development for us. PUBG and also DK, one of men's most respected titles in the gaming space as well. Um, I've been working in the gaming space, I think, for close to, I think this is like my fourth year, but when it comes to public relations, it's been actually close to a decade. Similar to Rana, yes, I've also handled technology clients, technology PR before. I kind of miss the space, but I feel that gaming is a better fit culturally for me in general. It's a
Yeah.
lot more dynamic. You get to also meet a lot of fun people that play games with you. So I'm always very happy, if anyone wants to play Power Exile, any one of the games that I just mentioned as well. So yeah, looking forward to getting to know everyone better in this panel and
Yeah.
looking forward to have a very exciting discussion as well on media collaborations. Yeah.
Yeah. So since today's topic is media collaborations, so my first question is when a video game company decides to go for a media collaborations, so what's the true objective behind that? I mean, uh, how does a company go for that? And what are the business, how the business objectives align with the overall marketing goal? So any of you can take it. Probably, I think Rana, you can take it because you are on the PR side in particular.
Yeah, so it was all driven from the top.
Yeah,
If it's B2B or B2C, to kind of you need to understand what is that overarching vision for the company.
yeah,
What is the messaging at the top end? Where's the company going? Is North Stars. I think that will already be established, and then there's usually a marketing layer, and if not, but there's going to be some targets. Then the communication strategy needs to say what you're going to do without
mm,
talking about tactics. So there's this front end alignment with where the company is going. Say, for example, I don't know, you're a publisher, a mobile games publisher, and you want to attract more developers into your investment ecosystem. So you
mm,
need to create a communication strategy which is going to reach these developers to pull them into your ecosystem. So then there's various levels which we would normally do. It's like look at what kind of messages are needed to reach specific audiences like developers publishers, investors, and brands, and so forth. So whenever we start with a new client, whether it's like Battler Polytopia or Zebedee or Sansoft, we look at what's most important to them. Then we give a consultancy about what kind of strategy will work. Then we advise on what messages, and then tactically we look at how we're going to get this message across to the audiences, and how are we going to engage with the audiences meaningfully. So that's what I would do, and that's not, this is not like a secret sauce. This is like general communications marketing theory, but not everyone does it, weirdly. But that's what I've heard from other people who've worked at big agencies, and this is what Raptor does for its client portfolio, from indies to big
Mhm.
publishers.
I think now these days, and just kind of to like add on your point, Rana, and maybe
Mm,
Rishi, after this, maybe you would like to chime in as well. But I mean, other than just sending out like the right key messages, it's also about reaching out to the sort of like very specific audience that you want to actually like go for. Like say for instance, if this is like an ARPG game like Power
mm,
Exile, and not everyone is into ARPGs, not everyone is into like playing MOBAs and whatnot. But as we are very well aware, like, and we were kind of like having a little mini discussion before this as well. I think gaming websites are also getting a bit more, I would say, like niche, a bit more
mm,
specialized as well. And those are the types of like collaborations that we really really want to go for, that helps achieve our business objectives in
mm,
reaching out to these, like, I wouldn't call them like niche gamers, but
mm,
you know this sort of like alignment, or linear alignment or orientation, whereby we know that, say for example, maybe like it could be a case of like an MMORPG site being very interested in an ARPG game, and likewise you would see similar interests as well for maybe like a mobile website that's interested in like a shooter game like PUBG, that sort of thing, because it's a mobile game in itself. So I think when it comes to, not just like issuing out like the key messages, but
mm,
also, the target audience, I think it's like pretty important as well how we also kind of like segment certain objectives in reaching out to the right audience. And we know that, okay, yeah, these are the titles that we definitely want to go for when we evaluate like potential media relationships. How do they help us to resonate and reach out to our current target audience? How do we, follow up from there, and also kind of like in a way try to drive this user conversion back to our games? I think like these are the sort of like key components from like a publisher level that we are really really looking at, especially when it aligns with like overall marketing plans, wish lists, downloads, user acquisition, user retention. You have it. Rishi, do you want to add on? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think both of you are quite on the money in terms of strategy, but how it actually works out in real life is also a lot more fascinating. And that's
Yeah.
what I tend to specialize in. So, for example, with Indus, we wanted to make sure that we had the right investors and the right business partners and the right publishers in the room. And how do we create a big splash? So, one thing we did, which worked out really well, even to this day, was partnering with Stuff Magazine, because in India, Stuff Magazine is seen as super premium. The people who read that magazine spend 200K INR on speakers. It's
Impressive.
it's the
Wow.
super posh crowd, right? But
mm,
Stuff Magazine is editorial as hell. They're not going to take us because, hey, please cover us, right? So the logic was to go in with something that made sense with them, right? So our objective was, okay, we want to get on the cover of Stuff Magazine. Obviously, artwork is one cool thing which they need, but they need more. So we gave them exclusive access to our entire team. We showed them how our games were made, and
mm,
through that editorial process we got the cover, which helped on multiple aspects of our business plan. One part was we got when you're raising money and you just put down the magazine on the boardroom table, it creates such a powerful statement that checks get signed, right?
mm,
So that's one good thing there that happens, and publishers take notice. So it was really funny because at that time we weren't out for pre-reg, but it created so much buzz that there were other studios that woke up and tried doing the same thing. But because we were pretty, I mean, at least at that time we had a pretty flat structure. It was very easy for us to get that done and execute in a way that showed value. And to this point, it's like even now when the CEO of Super Gaming is doing an address to the Prime Minister that gets covered by multiple news outlets, that Stuff Magazine issue is right there on his setup, similar to how Rana has Spider-Man. And that drives value even to this day. But and aside from that, we even created other moments around it, right? So we made sure that it wasn't just a one way traffic where stuff is giving us value. Our social media at that time was pretty popping. We had a great reach. So we made sure we shared that reach with stuff. We engineered a quote unquote leak of our iOS screen, which a lot of really cool sites like Gaming on Phone and the others covered. So the objective is, yeah, for us it was our mainline target was investors. We hit that, but then it was also making sure that the community gets to realize that, hey, there's an Indian game that's doing cool stuff, right? Let's pay attention to that. So that's one thing we did. And on a smaller scale, even with 4G domination, when we had announced the game for pre-reg 2 weeks ago, we had a very select group of specialist sites that had access to the game before announcement, right? So there was Gaming on Phone, IGN, and Digit. That's it. We kept it specialist. We kept it small because, as Kelly says, that's the niche. That's where you have the shooting audience here in this country, the BR playing audience, the multiplayer audience. That's where they are. So
Mm.
that's how it tends to work out IRL. And the reasons tend to be pretty pretty much triangulated across the board, where it's either getting investors in, it's either making sure publishers are paying attention, or in 4G's case, it was a simple pre-registration play. So that's why these things tend to happen.
That's a great perspective. I think the three answers we just received from three of you, it showed us the three different ways. I mean, Rana gave us the overview of the things. Kelly went into more towards the community and selective process. Rishi, you told us more on the B2B side of the things. So this was a great answer coming in from the all the panelists. So just a follow up question specifically for Kelly. This one. So when do you select? I mean, when do you select a media partner? What are the primary factors that you look at? Because you have been working with Moonton Games and now you are with Level Infinite. So you have been pretty closely working with the medias, right? So would you like to share some insights on that?
I think in broad strokes, and just to kind of like encapsulate what we've also highlighted earlier, it would be, visibility. What's like the reach that this, media or publication has? What's
Yeah,
their target audience? Like in terms of like, regional breakdown, is it maybe like, say for example, like more US readers, more readers residing in South Asia from India,
yeah,
more readers in Southeast Asia, or readers in China, because not every campaign
yeah,
is tailored to like a global audience, and not every campaign is meant for like a mass mainstream audience. Maybe there's actually something that's really niche that we are going for.
mm,
So that being said, audience is something that we look into very deeply as well. This might sound a little bit interesting, and also going back to what I said earlier on regarding like game specialization. um we're very conscious of writers that put out reviews, that put out content as well, but do they know our game very well to produce a quality
yeah,
level sort of like article? Do they, say for example, know the mobile scene very well, whereas mobile is probably, I think, one of the most trickiest like genres to ever like cover. So it's almost like doing like sports PR in that sense, because it's a competitive, very fast-paced, dynamic like gameplay involved, and there's like, say for example, like over 100 plus characters in like a mobile game
yeah,
itself. So it is impossible sometimes for like one to really know all the hero strengths, all of the characters, all of the skill combos, all of the gameplay. It's very, very difficult. But what really makes magic happen is when if there's like a writer who's like really, really specialized
mm,
in this genre and in this game, and it helps that quality, when it gets produced, it helps readers especially like understand the game a lot more better, because this writer probably knows how to, most importantly, like break things down and makes things digestible and understandable for your mass mainstream audience. And I think that's also kind of like the factor as to what we're really looking for these days when we assess, and when we analyze like potential media partnerships and the potential media value, apart from just your typical like AVE reach,
yeah,
what's the projected like ROI. But most importantly, it's, does the writer really know our game and what we are
yeah.
really doing and what we represent? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
I
can
think, yeah.
totally, yeah, I can relate to that. It's for a game like a MOBA, it's either you are going 100% or you are not covering at all. So it
Yeah.
generally happens like that. If a writer actually plays it, he will really love it, or he will not understand at all. So
Yeah.
I'm saying this from my gaming on phone's perspective, that we have over 900 articles for just for Mobile Legends. So I looked at that and I am even surprised. Like over the 5 years, so it is like publishing a Mobile Legends piece every alternate day, and it's going the same for also Honor of Kings, although it's pretty new. So totally, I can relate to what you just said, Kelly. So Rishi, would you like to add something to this?
I mean, yeah, one thing at least I tend to look at, and that's because I tend to err on the side of caution, is what's the intent coming in, right? Because at least the Indian marketplace is the kind of place where someone can give you a gotcha scare, someone can put in questions they're
Yeah.
not supposed to put in. So
Relatable.
yeah, so that's one thing. And as someone who's been on the other side of the fence, I very well have an idea of how that could pan out. So that's one thing. But I think the one part is that, and secondly is you also want to make sure you're working or collaborate. I wouldn't even consider working. I think collaborating with channels or sites that share the same intent, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, I mean, fine, you could end up spending 30 lakhs on someone like a techno or someone like a total gaming and all that, and
Yeah.
that'll get you a really wide audience.
Hmm.
But that's artificial calories, man. That's empty calories. That's not going to help. So to me, it's like, okay, what is what's the midline, right? So I look at creators usually in that mil to 5 million range. See
Hmm.
who's interested in growing, and okay, fine. Is there a way we can work together? So that's something which I feel helps and shows you growing in a way that is actually sustainable, right? So that's how I tend to look at it as well, where it's the intent. If you're able to judge intent, and if it and everyone will learn along the way, because thankfully I'm not the games I work with thankfully aren't as dense as mobiles, so it's mainly shooters, thankfully. But usually the logic is, okay, what's the intent and how can we help each other grow?
Hmm.
So yeah.
Being on the both sides of the table, I think Rishi will relate to all these things very clearly. I mean, you have been a
It's
journalist, editor, and now you are also like a PR guy, also a video game consultant. So now the interesting take we'll hear from Rana. So because he is the agency side and he is helping the companies to evaluate the media partnership. So Rana, what do you think of
yeah.
this issue?
So what we've done at Raptor over the last 12 months is heavily pivots away from media relations.
Yeah,
From a Western perspective, the media is dying. There's less journalists, there's less outlets. AI is ripping into journalists' livelihoods.
yeah,
It's the reality of it. And a lot of senior writers who sadly have their open for work. Well, there's nothing wrong with having the open for work banner on LinkedIn, but there's a massive decrease from like a UK US perspective, number of actual journalists who exist. Now, pre-COVID, you could call up a journalist, a national newspaper or media outlets. That doesn't really exist apart from the tier ones. So the pivots we've done is basically to see how else can we get messages and engage with audiences. So from a B2B perspective. So yes, we're reaching like Venture Beats and Gaming on Phone and Pocket Gamers. That's fine.
hmm,
But then you need to think, how else can we reach developers and publishing investors? So we need to look
yeah,
at other channels. So this is going linking back to platforms like this. What value can a brand, developer, publisher, ad tech company, fintech, whatever, give to its audience?
hmm,
How can it really give value to a community? What kind of CSR initiatives kind of company deploy? So in terms of, I absolutely agree with Kelly. Audience identification is absolutely critical. Media selection, media research is super critical. But from a US, I can only talk about like US, European perspectives. Um, we have to deploy integrated campaigns
yeah,
to hit earned news websites like yourselves, owned. So we're doing loads of video content. So really cool produced explainers, or it's a lot of what we do at Raptors B2B tech. It's like
hmm,
explaining what are web shops, what are game hubs, what's an SDK for Bitcoin integration layers. It's quite complex stuff. And the best people who explain this stuff is the clients. So what we're doing right now is creating video content for these guys, which they can share across own channels, but also to create platforms. Those could be webinars, but
hmm,
also real world from a B2B perspective is essential where we can put the client in front of warm leads conversations from BD perspective and really help to form those relationships. Um, Media is still very important from a Western perspective, but
Mhm.
sadly, it's diminishing month by month. And this is what my team come back to me and says, Ron, I can't. I tell them, call bloody journalists. It's a bit hard. There's none around. They're all remote, so forth. There's less of them. But that's like a reality which Rapture's doing. I mean, when we started 3.5 years ago, it was like mainly media, 90%. And
Mhm.
now the media engagements for earn side is like 50% of what we do now. We do paid media partnerships like Pocket Gamer.
Did Rana freeze? I couldn't hear.
Yeah, I think he
Yeah,
froze.
yeah, he
Yeah,
looks like he's frozen.
yeah, he did.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
Yeah, you're back. Yeah.
can you see me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So long and short, media is decreasing. So think about how else can you reach your audiences and give value and engage with them, which is a two-way process.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for your totally different side of the things, Rana. So
No
we
problem.
loved how you explained the B2B side on more on the different side of the things. So before we move to the next question, let's just take a question from the audience. So let me read it out. This should probably go towards Rishi because this is specifically to the Indian audience. So Rishi, I'm reading it out. You can just
Sure,
see.
sure, sure.
What are the key elements of a successful PR strategy for Indian hyper casual and casual mobile game developers, considering the unique challenges and opportunities in the global and domestic markets?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I usually believe that there is no one size fits all. And a lot of it also has to do with the kind of game you're making and the kind of audience expectation that's usually there. Because hyper casual and casuals are a space where where there's a certain expectation set in, right? So, for example, with BRs or shooters, there is an expectation that your game has to be high fidelity. If it's
Mhm.
not high fidelity, if it's not running really well, don't ship it, right?
Yeah.
So it's a question of knowing those tropes of the genre you're playing in well enough. That's one part, and the second part is obviously how it's layered and what the studio story is. That also it falls an important part of it,
Yeah.
right? So particularly from India, because what you have, the advantage you have as being an Indian studio trying to do something like this,
Mhm.
is there is is at least from the B2B side, there's a lot of interest, be it from VCs, be it from publishers, be it from everyone. Just know, okay, fine, the market's great as a download market, but can
Mhm.
they actually make games? And
Yeah.
that ends up being a very powerful narrative to at least build up your visibility before you even build up your talk conversations around your game. So
Yeah.
I do think that's an important part which a lot of studios here tend to miss out on.
Mhm.
That the ecosystem narrative isn't there yet, and the guys who do it the best are the big ones you see right now, be it in Nazara or Jet Synthesis. They're great at pulling the India story out. So I think crib notes where you can, and build on
Yeah.
start with that, and then get into the weeds about your game and how you're making it different and why it's cool and why people should check it out.
Yeah. Thanks for the answer. It was great. Thanks, Rishi. So we'll take another question for Kelly. I mean, this one is specifically for Kelly. So we have this question from Rahul Saiz. So hi Kelly, can you please shed some light on what's the secret to getting big media outlets to notice small studios?
A pretty good question, and I think my answer is also kind of like I would say hinging on what Rishi also shared as well.
Mhm.
But if I were to be really, really direct about it, I would say that don't make a game that is so similar that
Yeah.
is, kind of like I wouldn't call it like a complete or exact sort of like I would say copycat, but offers a very distinct sort of like gameplay, game style. Heck, even like, character design, like just make sure that everything else is different and know what you're making for your audience. Once again, I'm kind of like pivoting back to that very, very important bit, especially around community as well. Know what your community seeks for. I think maybe a very good example of this is actually I would say Black Myth Wukong. So as
Yeah.
we all know how it all started, right? Initially it was by, just like what 10 less than 10 deaths, less than 5. but it caught a lot of mainstream attention because of how good it looked. And we don't have like a sort of like Eastern AAA title
Mhm.
that looks so good on Unreal Engine, especially when it first came out and when it was first featured at China Joy. There wasn't anything like that being like showcased before, and that's why like it caught so much media attention, especially from like the bigger titles as well. Be it your IGN China, your Gamers, etc., Gamer Sky, Gamer Grape. Like it just caught a lot of like wild, I would say, attention from many of like the larger gaming titles, because this was a game. And I think this kind of like also falls on what Royal was also doing with this brand as well, whereby they're making games for a mass audience that is accessible, approachable, and they're making very, very difficult games that the market that has currently matured for, but no one else has made it yet. So I think it's great.
I
I
can't hear
think Kelly,
Kelly.
your voice is breaking.
Hello? Yeah,
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
better.
now it's better.
sorry about that. Yeah. Uh, make sure that your games, they have something, or they are filling in, a desire, a
Mm-hmm.
connection, a need from the audience that no one else has ever done it yet. Sure, it might sound like, completely like far-fetched, but
Yeah.
trust me, I'm very, very certain that even up to now, right, there are still some games like out there that people haven't made before that would help to satisfy that itch or desire, for like, say for example, like a cozy game that is just very, very relaxing for everyone,
I,
like a
I,
farming simulator game that is even more relaxing than Stardew Valley. I don't know, okay. I
yeah.
don't know.
So
I'm just speculating, but yeah, I mean, there's a game that everyone really needs. We probably do not know what we really need yet. We probably need to do more market research on it, but I mean, that's what it's all about. So yeah, just make sure that your game has a really, really good distinction, and that really sets it apart from the rest. I think that would be my recommendation. Yeah.
Thanks for the great answer, Kelly. Since you mentioned about
Just
the yeah, since you mentioned about the cozy games, I think there are some developers particularly catering to the genre. For example, Hyperbeard makes those really cozy mobile games. If you just check any of their games, all of their games are very similar and caters to that only, like the cozy family vibe. So, Rishi, were you telling something?
yeah, I think just to build on what Kelly said is
Huh.
you also need people are interested in stories of people,
Yeah.
right? So one part is yes, the product and getting that to the right zone to get eyeballs. But the also other part is the story of how it was made. That in itself is able to elevate what the studio is making and get more eyeballs on that as well. And that's something some developers have done. Like the if you ask me, the guy Super Giant's done a great job at that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Super, in my and there are other studios here. Like for example, Raji,
Yeah.
pre-launch, their biggest story was how they actually it was pretty much a true story of how they had to mortgage their houses to make the game made,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think it's trying to find or surface those moments that elevate the entire process and that takes things to the next level. So I think it's that in addition to making all the cool stuff that Kelly talked about.
Yeah. Thanks for the addition, Rishi. So I think Rana, you have a very good case study to share here. So if you don't mind talking about Battle of Polytopia, because they are a very small studio, but everyone knows about them. So
Yeah, so Midjuan is a Swedish developer, and they
yeah,
have one game,
yeah,
Battle of Polytopia.
yeah,
What makes them remarkable is that they have 20 million organic downloads
yeah.
without aggressive monetization. Very product focused, very community focused, and it's a good game. It's a nice immersive experience, and their particular story is that we don't aggressively monetize.
Yeah.
That's a really strong narrative, and
Mhm.
they've got a massive cult following. So I mean, they hired us for their B2B story because they've been around for quite a number of years. I've forgotten how many exactly, but they're a small group of developers. There's no more than 10 based in Sweden, and they're just crafting a beautiful game, regular updates, and they're a good, they're a really good case study and role model for the mobile games industry that you don't need, Monopoly Go levels of UA budget to be a success. You can still have a good life and, have, it depends how you define this commercial success. There will be some mobile game developers who want to be unicorns, but that's not going to be, they're few and far between. But the reality is there are lots of talented groups of people around the world who love making games and who want to create and deliver immersive, fun mobile gaming experiences. There's another company on our radar which makes Grand Mountain Adventure. I recently discovered this game. It's a
Yeah,
really simple game, left and right,
yeah, yeah,
but you can have really detailed, fun, playable game experiences without aggressive monetization. And again, this is two developers, the three brothers in Sweden,
hmm,
who've crafted a great game and a great community, and they've got a sequel coming out later this year.
yeah,
So in a time of layoffs, and mass recalibration in the games industry, it's heartwarming to see good people with good values, not aggressively monetizing gaming
yeah.
content, but delivering gaming experiences which like a hardcore gamer like me could get involved with. And I
Hmm.
think that I see as like it's something which I'm quite passionate about, to support these kinds of developers who are, it's not just about the bucks, but they just want to make really good gaming content for very specific audiences.
Yeah.
Love that.
Thanks for the answer, Rana. So
Pleasure.
once again, it was a very different take than the others. So we'll move to the next question. I mean, our discussion not will take a question from the audience towards the end. So moving to the next question. So how can developers effectively reach the media partnership to extend their games reach and visibility, and how does the communication strategy differs from region platforms, maybe player base, etc. So who would like to go first? Anyone? Rishi, you can go.
All right, sure. So it's a question, like the way I look at it, it's a question of reverse engineering to a degree of what the outlets want, right?
Yeah.
So for example, I know that the top 10, top 15 sites here are very SEO focused, right? And I know gameplay is everyone's favorite keyword.
Yeah.
So the objective is, okay, you want to deliver them something that makes sense. I don't want to overdo the fact that I know they like SEO, but I also want to make sure they get something that matters. So what tends to happen is you end up getting into this situation where, okay, if you're in a stage of your product life cycle where you're looking at pre-registrations and you're looking to push the pre-registration number up, then
Mhm.
you focus on smaller engagements, right? So for
Yeah.
example, we reach out to a site like, let's say, an IGN, and we'd say, okay, look, we're probably going to go live with with certain GIFs and certain features that are going to be debuting. They're not that major that it demands a press release, but considering their gameplay related GIFs, I'm sure that's something and we'd work that out on a case by case basis. So that's one way of looking at it. And the other way of maximizing that reach with the right audience also has to do with finding the right creators and finding the right partners that also match your goals, right? So, for example, if we want to get a certain set of messaging out, like, hey, our game is not like ABC game, right?
Yeah.
So then there are another set of people to work with, as long as there is a certain objective that works for all of you. So I think a lot of it hinges on identification of the right media and working with them in a way that gets the word out. So, for example, if I needed something to get out really wide, the target would be everyone whose similar web stats are in the 100 million plus. But 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 at the same time, when you do something like that, the real value on that is next to nil, right? You can't just because they're doing 100 million, 300 million similar web doesn't mean that story is going to get even 5,000 views. So it's a question of mixing and matching and min maxing all of that to the best degree on a case by case.
Yeah. Kelly, would you like to add?
Honestly speaking, I think it kind of depends on like mostly like the angle that we are going for. Especially when it comes to like maximizing the or rather as per the correct term that Rishi put across, min maxing, especially when it comes to like certain regions as well, because not every region would, like, say for example, appreciate the sort of like same heartwarming or human interest story that we are putting out. Like everyone has, like I mentioned before, very different needs, very different, like I would say, like ways of even like digesting information. So honestly speaking, like it really is like a case by case basis, right? Like as per what Rishi mentioned as well. But I think in general, like when it comes to, I would say, really propelling and putting your game out there like to its fullest, really maxing it out, um one should really like explore a more integrated communications effort rather than focusing on a pure like solid approach, which is very focused on print. I'm sorry to say this, and I'm sorry if there are also boomers in this conference. I'm really very sorry to say this, but the truth of the matter is that everyone is using social media now these days. So maybe we should pivot towards like a, more of a SEO social media integrated communication strategy. I'm so sorry to say this. I know the truth is very hard. I know. I understand how you feel. But yeah, it really is what it is today. I mean, I'm sure that, your grandson, your niece and nephews, all of them are using TikTok. So why
Yeah.
are we not pivoting towards an integrated communication strategy to help our
Mm,
publishers and developers and our small studios increase their community reach? That's the main purpose of actually what we all do, especially if you're very
mm,
passionate about your game, right? You want to know the best way of reaching your community. So
mm,
maybe like a more community centric channel based approach is something that we should all be really looking at, especially in this time and this day and this age. So yeah,
mm.
Wow,
That's a re-
that's great, Kelly.
hard
Uh,
I
truths,
got,
hard truths, bro.
I got to
yeah.
add to Kelly's point. It just reminded me of something. So, absolutely, there's different generations of people in the games industry,
Hmm.
and there's also different neurodiversities, different character types, and the different ways people consume content. So it's like ensuring your communication strategy caters for the different types of people who exist. Like I love snackable content. You know, Thomas, one of my guys, loves long form white papers.
Yeah.
Oh
Gen
Lord.
Z, yeah. So it depends on the audience. If it's B2B, then there's value there, or ebooks. But it's like
True,
we need
true.
to absolutely adapt content for audiences and personality types. Because I'm not one to read long form.
So thank you for the answer, Rana. So we are going towards the end, so we don't have much time, but I'll take one more question. But please be brief with this one because this is a very interesting question that I want the panel to answer. So the question is, how do you balance the peso model in video game PR, and how has the rise of shared media impacted your work? So Rana, you should go first for this one.
Yeah, I
Please
mean
be
it's
brief.
it's yeah. Some there's some factors like how much budget you have,
Yeah.
and it's like that determines if you do paid in the peso, basically.
Yeah.
How much budget you have for influencer marketing campaigns, how much budget you have for events. So it's a very difficult. Like Rishi said, there's no one solution which fit all.
Yeah.
But what if you're a small organization, you need to be smart. You probably need to be more news focused. Yeah, and you need to make the most of specific budget. So, for example, a small developer could do some earned, some reviews, some blogs and social. That's what, say, I don't know, 10,000 euros will get you. Whereas a large multinational will be able to deploy a full integrated strategy with multiple agencies around the world. So it's difficult to give specific one fits. There's no one answer, basically.
Yeah. Rishi, would you like to add something?
I mean, firstly, I heard the word budget and I kind of laughed because, dude, you have a budget? Awesome. Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, seriously. Seriously. I operate on zero. So
Okay.
for me, it's all about earned, it's all about shared, it's all about owned. And it reaches a point where you're dreaming GIFs, you're dreaming snackable content, and you're trying to find angles for everyone in the way that makes sense. So I look at it from point of view as much that gets done on zero is the right way forward and build from there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, in all my years of doing this, I'm only exploring certain paid options this year, right? So otherwise, everything has been zero, and it's better that way, right? It's easier to track.
Yeah.
There's no because the other thing is, at least what I've realized is the moment you put a budget to it, there's going to be a lot of ROI
Yeah.
requirements, which may or may not. And with media, it's always a 50-50, right? So I always try to operate on zero. And okay, if it makes sense to add a plus one, plus two, we look at it that way. But as much as possible, as much done at zero is the best way forward, I feel. I rather make content or compelling reasons for people to care. But that's just how I try to operate.
Yeah. Thanks. Kelly, would you like to add something?
I think, to be honest, like even for us, it also follows like what Rishi is doing. Like right now, especially, we're kind of like operating on like zero. We're operating on, I would say, like more towards of like shared and own content, because what it really also sometimes like surprises is that like content that we make from like ourselves, from our own, does better than like paid content sometimes. I have no
Yeah.
idea why. Yeah, but it happens. It's also because it comes from like our developers as well, from our studios. So the community wants to hear more from our developers and our studios, right? And not so much on all of the paid or sponsored content. Not too much of that actually. They really really want to hear from what's in the heart of the community, and that's our developers, rather than to actually like take a look at paid content, unless if it's like super clickbaity. But yeah, other than that, yeah, we are seeing more towards like dynamics, like shift towards like shared and own content actually. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we are not open to paid, or we're
Yeah.
not open to having earned as well. That's not to say that. It's just that I think it's just like changing consumer tastes, or dynamics, I would say. Yeah.
Mhm. So thank you, Kelly, for the answer. So I think we are towards the end of the session. So I'll wrap it up here, and I'll just debrief what we have discussed once again for the audience. And we had more questions from the audience, but unfortunately we couldn't answer all of those. So if your question has not been answered, please, you can always reach out to the speakers on the LinkedIn, or you can even message here on the platform. But I think LinkedIn is much better because they can respond quickly. So all of them are Rana Rahman. You can find him with his full name is Rishi Alwani, and his Kelly Chiew, as you can see the names. So please feel free to reach out the speakers on LinkedIn. You have anything to discuss, you have any business proposals around PR campaign, so you are free to reach out to them. So I'll brief whatever we have discussed. So we have discussed how a video games company generally should reach out. How the company decides to go for the media collaboration part. What are the factors they look at the media when evaluating the campaigns? How the developers effectively use the media partnerships and the peso models in the current scenario, particularly for the earned and the use of social media these days. So this is very important to go for multi-channel reach in particular. So with that said, we would like to conclude the session right here. So thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you Rana, Rishi, and Kelly for
Pleasure.
your time, and we'll see you in the next one.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
This
Very
was
Cheers.
lovely.
awesome.